Thank you for attending this morning. I'd like to welcome you to the Omaha Public Power District Board of Directors meeting. My name is Mick Mines, and I serve as chairman this year, and I serve also District 7. Let me introduce the rest of the board to you. Director Hurley represents Subdivision 1, and he is secretary of the board. Director McGuire, Subdivision 2, and is chair of the governance committee. Director Tim Gay represents Subdivision 3. He's vice chair of the board this year. Director Ulrich, Subdivision 4. He's chair of the Systems Management Committee. Director Green, Subdivision 5, is the treasurer of our board. Director Barrett, Subdivision 6, is a member of the Systems Management and Public Information Committee. Director Mike Kavanaugh, Subdivision 8, is a member of the Nuclear Oversight and Systems Management Committees. To my left is President Tim Burke, and at my far right, Corporate Secretary Kim Tracy. A couple of housekeeping items. First and foremost, please silence your cell phones and devices. If you don't have guidelines, we do have guidelines outside of this meeting room for public participation in the meeting. And the meeting, by the way, is being streamed live on the OPPD website. Following the presentation of each agenda item, I will ask for public testimony before bringing the matter to a vote, if we do vote. Please approach the microphone on my right and and we need your name and address, and we limit individual testimony to 3 minutes. A light system is located beside Mrs. Tracy, and she will signal you when time expires. Please focus your testimony on the agenda item that we're discussing, and please direct your comments to me, and we will respond accordingly. And then following our agenda, at the close of our meeting, we'll open it for public comment again limited to 3 minutes. And if you have any written materials, please hand those to Ms. Tracy. Thank you again for being here. Ms. Tracy, can you do the safety briefing?
Sure. There are several exits in this room. The 2 doors to the back of the auditorium or 2 doors to the front of the auditorium are exits. We would exit on the 16th Street side of the building, and when using the stairs, please remember to use your 3-point touch, 2 feet on the ground and 1 hand on the railing. Fire extinguishers, there is a fire extinguisher near the door of the conference room A, just outside the rear of the auditorium doors. If you have a medical condition, please write it down or let the person next to you know. The AED and first aid kit is on the brick wall to the right of the cafeteria entrance, one on top of the other. Is there anyone in this room who is AED or CPR certified or trained? Okay. In case of a fire, in the event of a fire, please do not use the elevators. Myself or a member of OPPD's security team will call 911 in the case of emergency. And in the event of a tornado or severe weather, we will be directed to a safe area of the building by security. Agenda item number 2, notice of the time and place of this meeting was publicized by notifying the area news media, by publicizing same in the Omaha World Herald and outlets, by displaying such notice on the arcade level of Energy Plaza since May 3rd, 2016, and by mailing such notice to each of the district's directors on that same date. A copy of the proposed agenda for this meeting has been maintained on a current basis and is readily available for public inspection in the office of the district's corporate secretary. Additionally, a copy of the open meetings law is available for inspection in the public meeting book located in this meeting room. Agenda item number 3, approval of the March 2016 Comprehensive Financial and Operating Report, the April 14, 2016 board meeting minutes, and the May 12, 2016 agenda. Motion?
So move.
Second.
Barrett?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Gay?
Yes.
Green?
Yes.
Hurley?
Yes.
McGuire?
Yes.
Mines?
Yes.
Ulrich?
Yes.
Motion carried. Agenda item number 4, persons wishing to address the Board of Directors on a particular item are asked to approach the microphone as that agenda item is discussed. Comments will be heard following board discussion of the item and prior to a vote by the board. Persons wishing to address the board on all other matters will have an opportunity before the close of the meeting. Agenda item number 5, resolution number 6117. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors accepts the monitoring report for Strategic Directive SD2 competitive rates in the form as set forth on Exhibit A attached hereto and made a part thereof, and finds OPPD to be sufficiently in compliance with the policy as stated.
Yes, the committee meeting, Public Information Committee met Tuesday and had a presentation on the Strategic Directive 2, and we were felt that the directive was in compliance with the policy as stated, and so we'd like to go ahead with the motion to approve it.
Any discussion?
Well, I think that discussion is that the big thing about the competitive rates is that we have established a rate target of 20% below the West North Central Regional average. And that's the bottom line to it.
Yeah, just also I'd like to add Director McGuire's comments on that rate. When you set that target rate, which we discussed in the committee meeting, is for economic development opportunities, which we're going to discuss next, and we approved that. But if you're going to have a public power entity, you need to be competitive, 20% below the rates, or why do this? So anyway, I'm glad we look at these every year, take a hard look at them, and the board decided that's where we need to be. So just put that on the record. Sure.
The target rate is 20%. It might be worth noting that at present, we are at 7.5% below the average. So that's very good, but we would like to see it move lower.
If I may, especially those of you at home streaming. Last summer and fall, the board went through an exhaustive process of establishing strategic directives and goals, operating resolutions for the interaction between the board and management. And this is the time when the update on those is coming before us. So we reviewed what we did last year, made what corrections we thought needed to be made, and it's on for approval today. There are 2 of them. The information itself you can find on the website, so everybody knows what our strategic directives are and what our goals are, what our operating resolutions are among the board and responsibilities of the president. So this is the first, you're going to see these periodically as they come through for review, because the goal was to review them annually. So this is what that is.
Yeah, this isn't the first. Actually, every month we've done some, and we'll continue to do those. Yeah.
We have more people than we normally do.
Yeah.
I might just comment that I think it's really good that the board has set a clear directive to management where we want to be. And this is a very definitive goal, and we have good plans in place to achieve it. It's not always doable instantly, but it is achievable. And I think we've got a good plan going forward. And I think 20% is right where we should be.
I think, the bottom line is, our competition is investor-owned utilities, and we want to remain public. And to do that, we have to have our rates lower than them.
Well, the general public wants us to continue to have lowest rates in the area. Tim?
Just a couple comments on this. I think it's really important as we looked at our 14 strategic directives, one of the challenges the board gave us are best-in-class metrics. So these are not middle of the roads. These are best in class in the industry. And I can assure you that from a senior team, we're focused on best in class. Our reliability on our transmission distribution system is on the top decile. Our customer sat is in the top, rated #1 in the business class and satisfaction. And we'll hear in a couple months where we are in the residential, but we're in the top 1 or 2 again this year in that area. So, we continually receive high marks on our strategic directives, but these are all meant to be stretches. And we appreciate that direction from the board because it helps us with the clarity that we need to put together the initiatives to meet those.
Tim, one thing on those too, affordable and reliable. So I'm
Absolutely.
glad you brought that up.
Absolutely.
It's not at the sake of reliability.
Correct.
At all. It's just, it's challenging, but doable, we think, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's why I said, you know, you can't do it right away. You
Right.
want to make sure the farmers still have their green bins that have air to them and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You got to do it in the right way.
Right.
And I think we have a
Right.
plan to make that happen.
Yep.
I have one quick question, is it's really important to talk about something, but you gotta know the price of it. And if anybody here knows what, in Western Iowa, what Mid-America pays per kilowatt hour, or what they charge South Dakota, Kansas City Power and Light, or MPPD, where do we fit into that mix, and what's a specific number that we have?
You just said 7.5%.
7.5% of what?
Below this area, this region. The west-north region, central region right now, we're 7.5 below that
Okay.
average.
It involves the
Below-
same, about the same area as
Below what?
PP.
Okay, what?
It involves about the same area as SPP, and they are both private and public utilities. Checked, and we're below that average of the ones basically through the middle of the United States.
Okay.
That's our competitive
That's our area.
region, actually, so that's.
I have no
why
idea how we
measure that.
compare the
Okay.
East Coast or West Coast or anything like that.
All right.
Cheaper than them.
And the question is, what's the average? What, is it $7, $8 per kilowatt hour, or?
Edward, would you want to address that?
It's a moving average, isn't it?
You're moving beyond our expertise.
Yeah, the 7.5%, is that below the residential rate or below, or an average of all our rates, or just
Okay, just a quick overview. So we look at these states that are around us, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, and then we look at the utilities within those states, and we take their rates, their average retail cost of electricity, and we compare our average retail cost of electricity to the average for all the states. And it is on that basis that we are 7.1% below that average.
Is that an annual or monthly, or?
It's an annual.
Okay.
So we're projecting where we're going to be at the end of 2016, and our projection today is 7.1%,
Okay. And the question is below what?
below the average for those states.
Okay, and
So
the
it
average?
includes the utilities that you mentioned.
Okay,
There's 17 utilities in that average, of which it includes NPPD, LES, OPPD, KCP&L, Mid-American,
Are those just
XL.
residential rates, or is that commercial and industrial as well?
It's all industrial and commercial, all retail.
That's why I can't give you a particular figure for the rate.
okay.
Further discussion? Before we take a vote, I'll open it up to public comment.
My name is Elaine Wells. Do you need my address? 5005 Reed Street, Omaha, Nebraska.
Good morning.
68152. Good morning. This is completely off the cuff, and I'm not representing anybody but myself. But it seems to me that you're putting the rate above all other considerations. And as we've said many times in these meetings, we need to look at the external cost, the cost of the environment, the cost of health. And I'm not sure that, I would much rather pay a higher rate, even up to the average of the region, in order to have long-term safety and security for people's health and for the environment.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Anyone else have comments? Saying none, Ms. Tracy?
Barrett,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
yes?
Gay,
Yes.
Green, Hurley,
Yes.
McGuire,
Yes.
Mines,
Yes.
Ulrich.
Yes.
Motion carried. Agenda item number 6, resolution number 6118. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors accepts the monitoring report for Strategic Directive SD11, Economic Development in the form as set forth on Exhibit A attached hereto, and made a part thereof, and finds OPPD to be sufficiently in compliance with the policy as stated.
Director Ulrich?
Need a motion?
Need a motion second.
I
Sorry,
so
need a motion?
moved.
Second.
Is this mine? It's actually Director Hurley's.
Yeah, it's actually mine.
But I'd be glad to talk about it.
And again.
Most of these are in my
Go
district.
ahead.
Go ahead, Rich.
again, last Tuesday, we had a presentation on this, and it does involve Fred quite a bit because it's about economic development, and a lot of economic development and projects have happened in his district. And it sort of ties with Strategic Directive 2 as well, because with the lower rates, we are able to attract more industry and outside companies. And open for questions on that.
And the reliability also affects that, but I'd like to point out too that the utility, OPPD, provides a great deal of economic development support to rural Nebraska, as opposed to like Omaha has a Chamber of Commerce and economic development coordinators, and that's not so much possible down in Omaha and Johnson and Pawnee County, where we step in with our economic development team, and Tim's up there, and others that step in there and provide that assistance to those counties to provide that kind of support to promote economic development, and we really do a good job at it, and I'm really proud of what we've done. And you can see on the pager, Oxbow, Grapple, Rotella's, Travelers, Fidelity, Midwood Farmers Co-op, all that's in my district. And they've really done a good job in southeast Nebraska. And I'd like to congratulate the team for all they've done on that. I really appreciate it. And those people down there do as well.
Anyone else? Do we have comment from the public? I see none. Ms. Tracy? Oh, we have one.
I'm trying to get out of here. It's just a lot of people today. Remember the good old days when it was just you and me? That's no longer the case. Laverne Train, 4819. If you remember, Google, Microsoft, the big data centers all made the same comment. Nebraska doesn't have renewable energies, and that's why they didn't place themselves here. Iowa's wind energy sector is what drew those data centers across the river. So if you want to attract the millennials business, which is the young people starting new businesses, you need to become efficient, highly efficient. Show that a company can be super efficient beyond anything you do today. And of course, that you would provide them with renewable energy on site. And that would be great. And then they would all come here in flocks. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Ms. Tracy?
Barrett?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Gay?
Yes.
Green?
Yes.
Hurley?
Yes.
McGuire?
Yes.
Mines?
Yes.
Ulrich?
Yes.
Motion carried. Agenda item number 7, resolution number 6119. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Directors of the Omaha Public Power District that the proposal of L.E. Myers Company in the amount of $1,098,126.72 to supply labor for the installation of overhead equipment and pole replacement projects on request for proposal number 4977 is hereby accepted, and the form of payment and performance bond for such bidder is approved.
So move.
Second. Director Ulrich,
This is
it's
mine.
your
Yes, this is
show
mine.
again.
And I have people periodically go by and stop at my farmyard and inspect poles. And when they need replacement, they do that. And this is what that's going to be. And I'm going to let Vice President Dogman explain a little bit more about it. But that's the gist of it.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
As you know, we do have best-in-class reliable system, and to be able to maintain that, we have many inspection programs in place. And one of those programs is ground line inspection and treatment program, and where we go and inspect all the poles, the wooden poles, and make sure that we're being proactive and we're catching the failures before they happen. So this action board item is to approve, let me get my reading glasses. This board action item is to actually obtain additional construction labor to supplement our own crews to get this work done before the end of the year. We're talking about 1,000 poles that need to be replaced, and we need this additional help with our crews. Any questions?
Any questions?
I got a question. Have we used them before?
We have used L.E. Myers for a long time, and they
Many
do a
years.
very good job for us.
Did we know going in that we were going to need extra labor, or was that budgeted, or is this just?
We typically budget for an average, but obviously we don't know exactly how much we're going to need till we go through the inspection program and determine how many we need to replace and how much we have in the budget. And this is a 5-year cycle, so we try to catch all the system in 5 years. So every year we're doing inspection, and we try to kind of schedule that to eliminate the peaks and valleys. Any other questions?
It's really interesting to watch them inspect, and they treat them too.
It is, and through the inspection program,
If it's
yeah,
a good
they
pole,
do.
they treat it, and
Exactly.
it's very interesting if you've ever witnessed it, but,
Yeah.
and they do a good job.
Thank you, Mo.
All right.
Appreciate it. Any comments from the public? I see none. Ms. Tracy?
Barrett?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Gay?
Yes.
Green?
Yes.
Hurley?
Yes.
McGuire?
Yes.
Mines?
Yes.
Ulrich?
Yes.
Motion carried.
The next agenda item, number 8, the board last month directed the executive team to come back this month with an overview and an outline of our generation resources and any recommendations they may have for changes or modifications. And they're going to present that today, and I will turn this over to Mr. Burke.
Very good. Thank you very much, Chairman Mines. I have a couple people that will share in the presentation today. Mary Fisher, who's our Division Manager of Corporate Planning, and her staff obviously worked with our consultant on the modeling work of this. Edward Easterling, who's our Chief Financial Officer, will also present how this potential modeling could impact our financial pro forma over a course of a corporate operating plan lifetime for us, which is kind of a 5-year period. And then I will provide a little conclusion, a little front end context setting, and then the final conclusion that we would like the board to consider as part of our recommendation. We can go to the next slide. As we've been talking about strategic directives, it's really interesting. I'm going to talk about 2 of them here today. One of them is around strategic directive number 9, around resource planning. And this is really our opportunity to begin to think about resources for the future. We concluded this, a time frame in June of 2014, where we identified kind of a plan based on regulations on what we would do with our current generating fleet and look at other alternatives, where we essentially added additional wind. We made a commitment to reduce coal generation at our North Omaha units 1, 2, and 3. We also provided a commitment and a plan to put together a demand side management peak demand reduction of 300 megawatts, all part of our plan to move forward. What we're finding in the industry is that to put that plan in place and not do it for 10 years is just too long of a cycle in these changing market conditions. And so this directive is a directive where we will look at and assess for strategic and integrated resource plans our mix of generation assets, demand side management programs, purchase power agreements, renewable energy resources as well. And in the strategic directive, one of the things that we are essentially moving throughout our organization is to look at risk maybe differently than we've historically looked at risk, where you could put a plan in play and let that plan run for 10 years because the market and the changes in the market were not changing as fast as they are today. And so we part of this directive is to use multiple planning scenarios and evaluate a range of risks. And so today we're going to share with you the outcome of that proposed resource planning model work that we've done, and then with that kind of the impacts of the financial model for OPPD over the next 4 years and up to 5 years, and then long-term what our strategy would be. We can go to the next. You just heard a little bit about strategic directive number 2, and I think what's interesting, you cannot take one of these objectives and just focus on one objectives and meet it without impacting other objectives. So, the customer up here that was talking before, all of these strategic directives are integrated and interrelated in one way or another. So you just can't meet one without impacting another. So it's really that balanced approach in how we're looking at our business going forward. And as we've talked about before, the plan of the board is to be 20% below the regional average. And we have been thinking and looking at ways in which we could do that. And a couple of ways that we've done that is to initiate our cost initiative program. And so we've put together 4 waves. We've just completed a first wave that we've communicated to our employees over the last several weeks. 174 initiatives, $50 million of O&M reductions, about $10 million of procurement reductions. And we've communicated that to the organization, and we'll be sharing that detailed summary to our employees in the next week here. We also have 3 other waves that are in place, really to begin to look at process improvement and lean as a way where we can streamline our operations and reduce costs further as we look toward the future. So that is one of the initiatives that we have put in place to look at our strategic directive number 2 to be 20% below the regional average. And of course, resource generation. Our generation is a significant part of our overall cost of delivering of electricity to our customers. And so you're going to hear some of that discussion today and how we evaluated what that future generation portfolio may look like. We've talked about this before in this meeting, some of the strategic trends, some of the cost pressures that we have. I'm not going to go over every single one of these. You can see those on the screen behind me. But cost pressures on our business, ongoing regulations, ongoing impact of regulations, future regulations that are being planned or discussed, and whether that's from emissions to cybersecurity to operations of our systems in place to a number of other accounting standards that we're required to meet, are all putting cost pressures on our industry and on our business. There's also revenue growth pressures that we're seeing around our business. Certainly, we have seen over the years a nice growth of revenue, and that typically has been in load growth. But we're looking at reducing our peak demand. We're looking at the impact of energy efficiency on our business. We're seeing low market prices throughout our regional transmission organization called SPP, but it's just not our regional transmission organization. It's across MISO, it's across PJM, it's across ERCOT, it's across all regional transmission organization and footprints across the United States. And so we see these pressures kind of coming into play for us. And so how can we kind of focus our generating resources to meet these strategic needs? So the overall schedule that we've communicated to the board is that it's really kind of a 3-piece schedule that we have in play. Today, we're going to talk to the board about a resource plan schedule, what that may look like, and recommend them a proposal around what that future generation will look like, and hope that they will consider that in the June timeframe. Beginning now until September 1st, there are requirements under the current Clean Power Plan, and even though it may be in the courts under some constitutionality concern or claims, you are supposed to file as a state your first report in the September timeframe of 2016. And so we wanted to make sure that we began to look at our integrated resource plan and how that would impact the Clean Power Plan as we move forward to work with the state, the Department of Environmental Quality, the Energy Office, and the other utilities to make sure that the state is in compliance with the Clean Power Plan. And then third is a broader integrated resource plan. It's really a longer term. There may be some short-term recommendations we'll provide today. There will be, but it's also a long-term plan of what our integrated resource plan might look like. And with that, very clearly, we have a requirement with our relationship, contractual relationship with the Western Area Power Association to make sure that we file an integrated resource plan, obtain public input on that plan, and present that to them as part of our contractual relationship with the Western Area Power Association. So the framework and the questions that we asked our team, and we've had multiple people at OPPD kind of begin to work on this, because it does take a village to put together kind of an enterprise resource plan. It takes our transmission folks, Mo's team that's been working on this. It takes John's team, obviously from the generation side, Shane from a nuclear side, Edward from a financial and a corporate planning side to really begin to put together what that may look like, and Julie's team from a demand side management perspective. So the questions that we asked is, what is OPPD's optimal rebalance portfolio, considering the many market changes that we're seeing, regulatory changes, and technological futures that we see in the future? What are our current assets? What current assets remain part of our optimal future for OPPD's portfolio? What does that look like? what is the cost of keeping current assets in OPPD's future portfolio? So what is the difference between those and what's that look like? And we're going to share those with you today. And what is the cost or benefit of delaying potential asset retirements, delaying or accelerating, and the conversations that we've had over the years around this. And so we're going to share this with you and step you through the modeling process that we went through at OPPD to really bring that recommendation to you. So I'm going to ask Mary Fisher to begin to talk about some of the modeling scope that her and her team in conjunction with Pace Global put together. And then I'll ask Edward to come up and based on that resource portfolio that we're recommending, how does that impact our financials and how does that impact rates? And then I'll have the opportunity to close with our final recommendation.
Good morning, Mary.
Good morning. Is that on? Okay, great. I'm going to talk a little bit about the modeling scope that we utilize to rebalance our supply side assets. We were asked specifically to assess the economic viability of the Fort Calhoun station and to include an assessment of our clean power plan. The technologies that we considered as part of this optimization, we looked at gas turbines, combined cycles, cogen combined cycles, reciprocating engines, new solar, new wind, long duration batteries, energy efficiency programs, capacity and energy contracts, and then an extended power uprate for Fort Calhoun Station. The scenarios that we investigated are listed here. We started with a baseline scenario, which is basically our business as usual. Fort Calhoun Station continues, as does North Omaha 4 and 5, which get converted to natural gas, as we decided in our 2014 IRP. And the uprate is modeled as an option for the baseline. In terms of rebalanced, we look at all capacity options and energy options that were considered, were listed previously. We keep our existing contracts, so we have existing contractual obligations through our purchase power arrangements, through Western Area Power Association, and then NC2, the participants that we have in the NC2 station. Excuse me. We meet our renewable energy targets of between 30 and 50% and provide a wide range of resource alternatives as we move forward. What was the outcome? I'll give you the punchline here first. The key findings were Fort Calhoun drops out of every case where the model is given an option to drop it out. Additions are economically driven, not compliance driven, so we're looking for the lowest cost portfolio. The extended power uprate is not economic as we went through this modeling. We found that other carbon-free options are more economic. OPPD is in a good economic position to comply with the current Clean Power Plan regulations. We constrained our energy sales to moderate market variability, meaning we don't want to be out in the marketplace around that variability. We're going to constrain that as much as possible. And then we ran stochastics, which really means we're looking at the probability or the risk analysis and how we can confirm a lower cost, lower risk portfolio as we rebalance it. To give you a little idea of what this might look like, in a no CPP world, our baseline portfolio would look something like this, or would look exactly like this. Our system requirements, our customer's load, how we fill that load with our capacity additions that our capacity that we have today. Fort Calhoun, North Omaha, the conversion of North Omaha, our Nebraska City units, and our existing gas and oil units. When Fort Calhoun would drop off in 2033 at the end of its current license, we would bring in a gas CT, some reciprocating engines, we'd bring in new wind, and we would fill the gap with additional DSM. What that looks like in a rebalanced portfolio, when the model is given an option, it's picking up capacity contracts. And we actually went out for bid for capacity contracts. So we do know the actual pricing of these contracts. It takes North Omaha out through 2023, 2024. It does not go forward with the gas conversion. It wants to bring in a gas CT. And when I say it, I'm talking about the model. It brings in reciprocating engines, a little bit of batteries, new wind, and DSM.
Mary?
Yes?
Would you point out the renewable energy on
The renewable energy on the side is talking about, these are capacity requirements. This is talking about the energy. This would be the percentage of energy that would be renewable based on our generation load. So we would go from 16% We're thinking around 49% up to 50% in 2035. I will stress that this model went from 2016 to 2035, so it's a 20-year outlook of what our generating capacities would need to be, as well as what our energy would do in terms of renewable energy.
Thank you.
If I switch back to a CPP world now, what would our baseline look like and how would we comply with the CPP in the baseline, or business as usual? Again, we start with our system requirements. We continue to fill that with our existing units. Fort Calhoun would stay till 2033 at the end of its license. We'd bring in basically the same resource, as gas CT, reciprocating engines, new wind, and new DSM. You can see over here the renewable energy. And then in a rebalanced portfolio, it shifts. Again, it's bringing in the capacity contracts. When we bring in the clean power plant, it wants to keep that North Omaha conversion. It brings in a gas CT, reciprocating engines, new wind, new DSM, and you can see over here what our renewable energy portfolio would look like in terms of energy related to our total load or generation load. I want to talk a little bit, that was capacity. I want to talk a little bit about energy. So when we talk about energy, we still have our system requirements down here. We are long on energy in our current baseline portfolio. In our rebalanced portfolio, we remain long, which means that we have excess energy on the system today. If we would choose to get rid of Fort Calhoun, then what would happen is we would replace that with about 42% of wind, 2% of gas. 56% of this, because we're long on our energy, is not required to be refilled. So what were the results? We ran two different types of models. We ran a deterministic model, which would give us this net present value. So we start with our baseline as our reference case. We look at it in a no CPP world and a CPP world. As we go from our baseline reference case, we go to CPP, we're looking at the increased cost of $262 million in a clean power plan world. If we move to our rebalanced portfolio, we save $994 million from our reference case by moving to this rebalanced portfolio. And as CPP world, we save $735 million. I will stress that these costs and this net present value is over a 20-year time frame. In terms of risk, as I said, we're looking at a risk-based portfolio. We're trying to understand the risk-cost trade-off. In our baseline portfolio, at a CPP or no CPP, you can see it's higher risk given across the vertical axis, and it's higher cost. As we move to a rebalanced portfolio, we move down in cost and down in risk. I would like to turn it over to Edward to talk about the financial impacts of this.
Thank you, Mary. Edward, good morning.
Good morning. As Mary has mentioned and has presented the results of the financial modeling, what we've done on the financial side is to take that information and place it into our financial view over a 5-year period to understand what it does to our financial ratios and what it also does to our rates. So I'm going to show you two cases. First, we'll call it the COP case, which is very similar, or is the baseline case that you saw in Mary's modeling results. And then there's another case we'll call rebalance, which is the case that she also identified as rebalance. In the rebalance case, we looked at two other versions. We looked at two different decommissioning methods in that scenario. And in some of the comparisons you'll see COP, corporate operating plan, versus rebalance. And in some of them, you'll see corporate operating plan versus rebalance, and then compared to both decon and safe store, the two different decommissioning scenarios. I provide that. I'll point it out as we go through the graph, and now you'll know why they're different as I walk through it. Just some assumptions up front. First of all, we really tried to stay consistent with our corporate operating plan that the board reviewed in December of 2015. So our energy sales are consistent with that plan. On the retail side, on the off-system side, those sales are different because as we look at current prices today and projected prices in the future, it impacts and changes the amount of sales that you would assume and model. When we look at the revenues, The retail revenues are based on the same energy sales applied to rates. And then in the off-system, that the revenues are based on the market prices that are forecasted times the sales that we are projecting. On the expenditure side, 2016-20, which is the forecast period that we're looking at, is updated to reflect market conditions. In other words, fuel and purchase power prices change. Those costs change in the forecast. In the rebalance cases, we have Fort Calhoun discontinuing operations in 2016. I mentioned the two decommissioning options. The first one is Safe Store. It begins in 2016 with the completion in 2075. We also have a decontamination, which begins in 2016 with a completion in 2025. On the financing side, we include debt issues or issuances in the COP case. In the rebalance case, there's no call or indication that we would have to issue debt during that period. In the rebalance cases, we also funded $34 million into rate stabilization reserve. That money is put in to provide an overall balance of $50 million in the event of an unexpected risk event and the need to reduce or defer any potential rate increase. Financial summary up first. First of all, discontinuing Fort Calhoun Station operations results in improved competitive position, no projected general rate increases through the forecast period. Fuel and purchase power adjustment, we also call it the FPPA, will apply to future years, and it has not been modeled. Potential need to reset energy rate within general rates, that's something we'll come back and discuss with you in November around the normal budget discussion. There is a potential large write-off of Fort Calhoun Station investments, and you'll see that in just a moment. That results in a large net income loss in 2016. There's an increased debt ratio as a result of that write-off, and then we project stable debt service coverage and liquidity positions going forward. Overall, there's reduced financial risk with the rebalanced scenario. As I mentioned, in 2016, in the rebalance scenario, if you make a decision not to continue the operations of Fort Calhoun, we would need to write off on an accounting basis the investment that we have on our books today. That would amount to about $977 million. The net income in 2016 would decline to almost $1 billion on the negative side. As you look at 2017 through 2020, you can see that the difference between the COP case is shown in blue, and then the rebalance case is shown as gray. It would be a little improved outcome with the rebalance case in each year. To the left of 2016, you see the period 2012 through 15. That presents actual results just for comparative purposes. On the debt retirement and rate stabilization account balances, as I mentioned in the assumptions, we would transfer $34 million in 2016 into the account under the rebalance scenario. That would increase the balance to $50 million, and based on the projections, it would stay during that period, but would be there in the event that it was needed. On the debt ratio side, as a result of the write-off, when you write assets off, it impacts your principal, your equity in the system. The debt ratio is a ratio of equity to debt. And in today's environment and in the COP, we're about 51% on the debt ratio. With the additional expense or the write-off, that ratio would change to about 66% and then reduce about 2% per year to 2020. And at that time, it'd be about 58%. On the debt service coverage, we have a target of 2.0 times, equal to or greater than. You can see that in this particular comparison, we're showing you the decon and the Safe Store case because the results change depending on which option you select. And looking at 2016, you can see that as we stand today, our coverage level is slightly below 2 times. That's a result of what's happening in the wholesale market and those revenues not being as strong as we had projected. If you look at the other cases, the gray and the green, The coverage would increase because the overall O&M cost in those scenarios would be less, with the decision that would move those expenses into decommissioning. Days cash on hand, in 2016, you see an increased cash position. That increased cash would then be used to fund decommissioning expense going forward under the decon and safe store scenarios, and then it would also be used to support capital investments. Throughout the period, we're projected to remain greater than or equal to 100 days, which is our target. Looking at our rate target, or the history of, if you look at 2012, at the bottom, and you look at the period from 2012 to 2020, and you compare that to the percent below the regional average, you can see that we started at about 7% below the average in 2012, and today we're at 7.1% projected for year end. With the proposal on the rebalance, our rate position would improve within the region from a negative 7.1 to negative 20%, which is the target that was established in Strategic Directive 2. I'll just point out that it's compared to this black line up here, which represents the regional average. Keys to success on the financial side of making these projections come out the way they're projected is efficient or effective implementation of the decommissioning plan and reductions, continued implementation of OPPD way cost reductions, maintain that program going forward, and then to maintain a $250 million line of credit that we have today, and also our commercial paper program.
Edward, the restructuring, first of all, I'm curious how debt restructuring and the entire process is going to affect our bond rating.
At this point, I can't give you an absolute answer. I can tell you, based on my experience in preliminary discussions with the rating agencies, at this point, it doesn't appear that there will be an impact. It will be neutral. In one regard, you're increasing some of your financial ratios, but you're also becoming more competitive. And so they look at an overall risk balance. And so with that risk balance, they'll watch it very closely, but there's no expectation that it will result in a downgrade. I think the worst case for us could be, we're no longer on stable outlook. Maybe there's a negative outlook. Could be placed on watch for further review. Ultimately, it's their decision based on their observation of our performance. The key for us is to be able to perform whatever we say we're going to perform, whether it's the COP or whether it's the rebalance case.
Okay.
On that debt, though, we've always been very conservative on the debt load we carry. Other utilities are much higher than us, right? We'd just be kind of then going where most utilities already are at that 70% debt ratio. Is that correct?
I would say when you look broadly at all public utilities, that is correct. If you look at AA rated utilities, which is where we are, we're right at 50%. We're right in the range. If you go to 65, 66%, which is what was presented, you're still within the range. When you look at all the AA rated utilities, we're not outside of that range, but we have moved up the scale. And the plan would be to try to move back down closer to where we are today.
But that was short term. Didn't longer term, it came back down.
Yes. That's about 2% per year. So by the end of the forecast period, we're back down to about 58%.
Right.
We also have a strategic directive around financial ratios and markets. So here's one of those balance of the strategic
Right.
directives is that we may move up because of some decisions, but then obviously move back down with action and specific initiatives that we would put in place.
Right. So we have a strategic directive around having access to the capital markets, and not only just access, but access to low-cost financing. And so that would influence our plan here to try to get back to where we have historically been.
Okay.
And we would not be looking for any bond financing in the next 5 years anyway, is that correct, right now?
The projections are showing that we don't need any new money financing.
New money.
But from time to time, there are refunding opportunities. In fact, there's an opportunity at hand today we're looking into, and are considering refunding some of our existing debt. I know it's hard to believe with everything we've done the last couple of years, but we still have some opportunity out there.
Well, very good.
Yeah, thank you, Edward.
So in conclusion, the recommendation that we will, the management team would like to provide to the board of directors are really around four options. One is to continue our pursuit of the rebalance portfolio. Options as presented today in front of the board, really looking at long-term capacity replacements, but really utilize our integrated resource plan and our stakeholder process that we have historically used as a process to really finalize those replacement options and bring back to the board yet this fall. Really to prepare us for submitting that information to the Western Area Power Association based on our contractual commitment with them. There are some short-term capacity replacements that we would request the board to consider as we move forward with this recommendation. One is to utilize North Omaha 1 through 3 on natural gas during only peak load times. We've estimated that usage would only be maybe 1% of the year. As an example, the capacity factor is relatively low, but it's really for capacity reasons and some of those peak generating day reasons for the region. And that is a much lower cost capacity option for us than it would be to buy it in the marketplace. We would also look at purchases of available low-cost excess capacity from other SPP participants and other contracts that we would look at that would be consistent with our rebalance portfolio that we've presented here today. As Ms. Fisher talked about, we did go out earlier this year to look for RFPs because we didn't want to get to the point where we were estimating or guessing or assuming what those prices may be. We have those contracts. We have those option capabilities in those contracts to pursue these short-term capacity replacement options. The second option, obviously, would be that based on the information that you've seen today, that we would cease operations at Fort Calhoun Station commensurate with the outage that's planned in the first part of October. That we would move from the outage plan that we have in place, that we would move from that into a cold shutdown by the end of the year and work through that, obviously, with our operating folks to be able to do that. We will come back to the board in December with the confirmation of our decommissioning methodology and the strategy around that. Again, as we modeled both of those options, none of those changed the decision on the previous recommendation, which was to cease operations at Fort Calhoun Nuclear Station. The other recommendation that we would provide is no projected general rate increase through 2021. It would be for 5 years. And we believe this will really create the path to achieve rates that are 20% below the regional average, which is consistent with our strategic directive that the board provided to us last year.
I want to mention one thing is that when this is being considered, this has nothing to do with the performance of Fort Calhoun.
You're right.
Fort Calhoun's performance right now is the best it's been since before the flood. And all the employees at Fort Calhoun have done a tremendous job, taking much courage the past 8 years, and really putting out a first-class plant that came down from the very bottom quartile, right now looking at the second quartile, almost going up to the first quartile if we would have stayed there. So this has nothing to do with the performance of the plant. The plant is the healthiest it's been in years. We've got the best people out there. And this decision, you know, even though we're looking at financial stuff, it's very, very difficult for everybody in this room who's done this.
And let me
When we look
remind
at the
that
people.
there is no decision.
No,
until
just the idea of the
June 16th
opportunity
meeting.
to looking at this decision
We will-
has nothing to do with the performance
Right.
of our people there or the plant.
And Ann, just to expand on that, I told a group of leadership folks today, because the management team has seen them perform in preventing property damage and to the plant during the flood. And most of the public does not know that, doesn't know the extent that the people went through for multiple months. Heroic efforts by all the employees there, across the organization, but specifically at Fort Calhoun. And then to see them reconstitute the plant, to get the plant started in December of 2013, was just an amazing accomplishment to be able to do the things we did under the regulatory umbrella that we were required to operate within. And then to see the consistent improvement in the plant's performance, as Director McGuire indicated, to see that. We've asked them to do so many things. And they've been both feet in every time we've asked them. Last fall, we asked them, here's our competitive challenge to reduce cost. They committed to that. And so in the modeling, we show cost reductions at Fort Calhoun of about $30 million a year, capital cost reductions that we've modeled. And even then, when we've looked at the uprate, we've looked at all those opportunities. From a management perspective, we felt we needed to share that recommendation with the board. I would also say, and I'll be meeting with the employees this afternoon based on this recommendation. But I would say our partners, Exelon, have been great partners and have got us to the point where our plant is performing at high levels and in some case, best in class in the industry, by the way. Best in class. You don't always hear that, right? People don't always cover the best in class things that's going on in this utility. But there are best in class things going on that our men and women stepped up to do. That culture change and the behavior change that occurred there was incredible. So our recommendation is really reflective on the three things that are identified up there. These changing market conditions that are really changing the way we have to think about this business. What rewarded us so many years in the past is not creating that reward in the future. We just don't see it that way. And the industry is struggling with this across the nuclear industry, around the fossil generating industry, around all industries. The small scale nuclear plant that we have the smallest nuclear plant in the American fleet at 478.1 megawatts. It's a small plant. If it was a 1,200 megawatt plant, we may be having a different conversation, right? Because the marginal difference would be marginal at that time. And then obviously as the Clean Power Plan began to roll through, there were changes in that where nuclear was included and now existing nuclear isn't included. And so the industry is puzzled and perplexed about how a non-carbon entity would not be given a value and benefit in the future. And so that's the struggles that we have had to work through. And they've been difficult for us. They've been challenging for us. So this will be a tough day, for the OPPD family.
I agree.
So
I agree. Thank you. Thank you. And to reiterate, we aren't going to take a vote today. I'm going to ask the board for comments and observations, and then I'll ask you, the audience, to comment as well. So, any thoughts from the board?
I've got one, Tim. I know this is difficult for senior management and everybody at OPPD. What I'd just stress is the board has asked you to, on behalf of the ratepayers of OPPD, what's the best way to utilize our generation? So we've asked you and tasked you to come back with this recommendation, and I know it's hard, but I think you hit the nail on the head a little bit too. The reason we asked, in my opinion, was we can all see a changing market. And it's a small plant, and I've had the opportunity to come in and lately be on the Nuclear Oversight Committee, chairman of it right now, and remarkable job that our partners with Exelon and the employees, first of all, to get to this point where we're at. But the facts are, unfortunately, the market is just not there right now. I know we're not making any decisions today. But I do want to just stress to senior management, ratepayers, this was asked, and that is a reachable goal, as we've seen, and it's a goal we got to keep striving for. So I know you got some hard meetings coming up, and on behalf of just for me, thank you for bringing the information that we can look at, and we'll have a month to hear from ratepayers and make a decision.
And thanks too to the management team and your teams for, this is a tremendous endeavor. You have turned over every rock. It's very clear. We have decisions to make as a board. The you've given us the right information, and we'll make that call, or we may not make the call in June. But this was as in-depth a process as I've ever seen in my life. It was great. Anyone else?
Just that, reiterate, Tim, I mean, the employees up there have just been extraordinary. And the work they've done has been extraordinary. And these people that may not be working there anymore are not just employees of the utility, they're all of our friends. And we've all got to know them over the years. And so that, the human side of it is sad. The economic side is, ever since, because the plant is only so big and can't get any bigger. Since 3 Mile Island, the cost of regulation has just driven up the cost of running the plant. From things that were necessary because they weren't at 3 Mile Island, like plant-specific simulators and things like that, and then increased security forces. We have one of the largest security forces in the state up there as regards to the plant. And the economic models over the years have just changed and changed and changed. And the economic models and this is not the first time we've ever had this discussion, by the way. We've had this discussion about every 5 to 10 years over the last years that I've been here. And what's his name?
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
You know, it's kind of ironic that I began my career at OPPD as a summer intern, being the weatherman for the construction of that plant, and I'm going out now, possibly with the plant being shut down. So it's been a part of all of us for so long, and has been such a reliable provider to the community of electric and electric services, and it's always there, periodically being shut down. This plant has set the world's records for the longest time that it ran between
Trips.
Fuel outages. And so that's another example of what the people up there have done. And we were concerned as the thing went along, the cost of recovery and everything else like that we were committed to the recovery of the plant. Then we were committed to see if we could reduce the costs, and we couldn't. We did. I mean, these people got $30 million, as he said. But the economics of this business have changed so much over the last few years, and will over the next few years, that it's just not viable. It's just not economically viable, and that's the bottom line. And then it's what can you do to replace it? And that was the options that you've seen today. And sad that it came to this, because this plant has been a part of all of us, but glad that the recommendation has come from management as to what we should do, and it sounds like it's appropriate.
Thank you, John. We haven't talked about the people yet, and the process going forward, if in fact that's what the board chooses to do. Tim, could you shed some light on that?
Sure, and this is obviously one of those things, as the management team that we met with early this morning committed on, is that, you know, they are committed to nuclear safety on this plant, and we have to be, that's paramount for the continuation of this plant, and it will be, and they've just done, you know, exceptional work there, and to a T, they've committed to that focus, regardless of what the decision is in the June timeframe around nuclear safety, to protect the plant, protect the people. You know, this is one of those things that doesn't happen overnight. There's a process that the industry is required to go through to look at license amendments to the plant, and so there will be no, you know, major layoffs immediately, right? So that doesn't happen. It'll be over a multiple year period of time, and then we'll have to make some determinations on how those kind of roles in the plan are tied to these license amendments. So, so as we've told the organization today, there may not be, you know, immediate that would be significant, you know, to that plant over that kind of 12 to 24 months period of time. So we do have a requirement to keep the plant up and operating and have staff that's required by our license there. So we will work with the organization to make sure that that's in place and in play. And we will put arrangements in place so those employees can stay there to operate that in that regard. And then depending on the option that we pick on decommissioning, it's either over a 60-year process or a 10-year process, as an example. And so we'll be working with the plant and obviously with employees as we get closer to that recommendation to the board.
Thank you. Board? anything
Mr.
else?
Chairman, as the first Nuclear Oversight Committee chairman in 1986, they didn't have a Nuclear Oversight Committee when I was first on the board. I would like to offer my, Director Green and McGuire are much more eloquent than me, but I reiterate their sentiments about the employees and the people out there and the dedication that they've given to this utility. When I first got on the board, there was no training facility, there was no simulator, there was nothing. There was a bunch of trailers out there. And it was right after 3 Mile Island. And what really sunk Fort Calhoun, there were going to be 3 of those units of the 400, 500 megawatt, and they canceled them halfway through number 2. And that's been its albatross ever since. But the employees have never failed to provide excellent service to this utility. And I just think the world of all of them out there and the job they've done. I understand the finances of this. This whole world's changed with the natural gas prices and wholesale utility prices. But it's been a pleasure to have represented those people on this board for all these years, and I'll never forget it. And I really appreciate President Burke's commitment to the employees out there that we're going to take care of them and do it the right way. Eventually it was going to happen anyway. I mean, it's just too bad it has to be now, but I understand it.
Thanks, Fred. Anyone else?
I'd like to also reiterate the comments about the employees up there. I'm the new guy on the board. I've only been here a year and a half. I know that in January I won't be the new guy anymore. There'll be somebody else newer. But the times I've been up there, and I've been up there a number of times at Fort Calhoun, I've always been impressed with the plant, with the facilities, and most of all with the employees. It is an amazing group of super intelligent people that are running that plant up there. I have one request of Tim, if he could, the thing that I have always had trouble grasping, and I'm sure maybe some of the public might also have trouble with, is the impact of the actions of the Clean Power Plan, that change. I'm not, if you could explain in a little depth exactly how that change affected us.
Well, it's broad. I will go back before we saw the original plan of the Clean Power Plan. There was conversations and rumors, and as the administration and as the Environmental Protection Agency was beginning to put together what we believe would be their recommendations, there was a variety of folks that talked about, significant carbon taxes. And that could be anywhere between $50 and $150, $200 a megawatt. And if that was the case, we may be talking about different plants at different times, right? So, but when the original kind of the draft proposal came out, it included 6% of the nuclear output that you could use in the formulas in the Clean Power Plan. When the final plan came out, you couldn't even use any of the 6% of that output. There was existing nuclear was not considered part of the plan or not given credit for the Clean Power Plan. And so that's been, the industry was trying to actually include more of nuclear energy into the equation of the Clean Power Plan very clearly. And then obviously when the final plan came up, it was not included. And that isn't necessarily, being argued in the constitutionality framework of the Clean Power Plan today. It's really not about whether it's constitutional or not for the EPA to essentially have that plan at all. But outside of that, existing nuclear is not considered, and I can tell you, it's impacting the nuclear industry as we're moving towards what the elements of the Clean Power Plan may look like.
Thanks. So,
Not just us, but other plants, larger plants, even more. Is that right?
We're seeing the plant size to be really independent. I mean, certainly we're a small nuclear unit, and if you take a look at the plants that have ceased operation over the course of the last 2 or 3 years, they're relatively small units, similar to Fort Calhoun, but in the 800 megawatt range. But we're even seeing 1,000 and 1,200 megawatt plants not being able to meet market prices. And how long can you sustain that as a business? Yeah. And how long can our customer owners sustain that as a business? And that's the question that we've posed ourselves and came back with a recommendation.
Tim, I've got a question, follow up on Rich's. So Director Ulrich and Green brought up, when this first started, there wasn't a whole lot of oversight, but now it's amazing to me as a newer board member, the amount of oversight and operation, it adds so much to this cost. The regulatory burden on a small plant, I mean, just the operations and maintenance has increased so much over the years. It has to be part of this too. I know the market is
certainly
changed, but it's.
Yeah, I would say the Nuclear Energy Institute just put out a draft a day or two ago about, trying to work with the, regulators on reducing regulatory cost. And either the speed of that or reducing the cost, not reducing the safety. There's never been a discussion about let's reduce the safety in the plant. It's always been paramount, the highest level of safety. But do we have the right kind of regulatory parameters in place to be able to be competitive? And so NEI, the Nuclear Energy Institute, has really put together a variety of different initiatives, the work in the industry about trying to reduce costs to make nuclear plants more competitive. And in that would reduce some of the regulatory burden that they have today. And so obviously those will continue as planned, would be my guess. So,
okay. Anyone else?
I have one thing, and I've looked at the economics of it, and you just can't keep losing money until you have to say enough is enough, and you've got to stop the loss. And that's the cold hard facts of this business. But the time, the sweat, the energy that John Hanson and Mo have put up there, and to all the rank and file, during the flood and after the flood and everything, it was 12, 16-hour days, 7 days a week. And I have friends, I don't know if they're friends, they may be former friends, but just the sheer amount of work that they would do when the plant would shut down and they'd refuel, it's just respect to their hard work. And my hat and my salute goes to them.
Thank you. With that, are there comments from the public?
Yeah. Vern Train, 4819. I just want to sit here for 3 minutes and smile because the management team is pursuing policies that I totally agree with and are awesome. I also cried and got shivers up my back when I read or heard the 2016 decommissioning, and probably not for the same reasons as you folks, because you know the folks working there. I'm just more in tears about the fact that there'd be no more nuclear waste generated. And I kind of think you're getting rid of the nuclear power plant to get rid of me, which would be very successful.
There'd be cheaper ways.
Cheaper ways.
Is that a promise?
And anyway, I just, it's great to see the heartfelt sentiment here. And it's great to see that the utility might be moving toward cleaner. This will be the second happiest day of my life. Next month will be my happiest day of my life if you vote for it. Please vote for the management's recommendation. It seemed like the sensible one. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Tracy Hightower-Henney, 11811 North 58th Circle. My husband is one of those very talented people at the plant. He literally this week received from the NRC his senior reactor operator license that he has been working there for about 12 months just to receive that license. I understand the dollars and cents, but as an OPPD family, part of the family as my husband and I are, it's just very disappointing that the first we heard of this was when my phone pinged last night at 10 p.m. and we saw it on the news. So I think that they deserve, that family deserves to hear this. And Mr. Burke, that's great that you're gonna have a meeting with them today, but to hear this at 10 p.m. last night was very disappointing. So they deserve that. The talent that is at that plant is amazing. And it's really sad that that talent is gonna have to go away from Omaha too. So, thank you.
I'm not sure that talent's going to go away from Omaha because we're going to work really hard to retain them in our facility when we can, in our other facilities when we can retain them in our other facilities, and certainly within the Omaha area. And I give you my commitment, we'll work like hell to make sure that happens.
And I appreciate that. I just asked for communication with the family and.
I will just share with you, our intent was to have the communication with the employees today. They're meeting with their supervisors after our meeting at 7 o'clock this morning, and they were going to be told that information. And obviously, we didn't share any information with media that didn't agree to embargo it till after this board meeting because it is a complicated issue. But obviously, others have different interests than our employees at stake, and that's disappointing from my perspective, to be very honest with you, and in some respects appalling, actually. And so I apologize for that, and I apologize to the leadership team today, and I'll apologize to the employees this afternoon.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But going forward, just communication would be great.
I agree.
Thank you.
We agree with you on
Totally
what you
agree
heard
with
last
you.
night.
Thank you.
People don't know what the term embargo is.
Good morning.
Morning, my name's Alan Bavoka. I'm associated with OTARC. You guys have seen me before. This is a very complicated plan. Obviously, today, the focus is on Fort Calhoun, and that's appropriate, but there are a lot of other things in the plan. I'd like to congratulate the staff for doing an amazing job of thinking outside the box, letting all the preconceived notions dissolve and look objectively at the situation. And there are many aspects of this plan that will be implemented over a few years of either this plan or some similar plan. Today, you know that you're going to be faced with a difficult decision. It won't be the last difficult decision given the changing technology and changing marketplace conditions. And I think congratulations are appropriate for the people who have done this kind of work, and I'm glad to see that they're doing it, and I hope that they will continue to do it because this won't be the last time. Changing market conditions and changing technologies have a dramatic impact on OPPD in the next 10 to 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Good morning.
Good morning. Mark Welsh, 5611 Howard Street here in Omaha. I'd like to just sort of echo what Alan just said. You know, I'm very proud to be a customer owner of OPPD right now because the board is taking a hard look at a very hard potential decision that you're all going to have to make. And I'm very glad that you're not looking at a 20-year horizon, that you're looking at a much shorter horizon with the changes that are happening in the energy industry. That's a very important thing to do. You know, wind power keeps coming down in price, solar keeps coming down in price, causing you to have to make this decision now. So I'm very glad that you're doing that. I'm very proud to be, like I said, a customer owner. So keep up the good work.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other comments? I see none. Anything from the board? Anything else? We are adjourned. Thank you for coming. Thanks.
Right at the,